Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chant, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Wednesday, April 19th, 2023. We've had to resort going back to our older COVID times method of delivery using a webcam because we had a hard drive fail on one of the TV production computers that helps feed the signal there through the teleprompter and TV camera. So we're hoping to be back in front of the weather wall there with the maps perhaps sometime next week. So thank you for your patience. If you'd like additional weather information, you can always go to weather.gov, point and click map of the continental U.S., and you can get watches, warnings, advisories, and forecasts for anywhere in the country. As of this Wednesday afternoon, of most noteworthiness is a couple of tornado watches there and through the central U.S. from parts of Iowa down into southeast Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and far north central Texas, a broad area of critical fire weather for very dry conditions combined with winds and warm temperatures there, causing very high fire danger there in New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma panhandles, and southeast Colorado. We still have winter weather going on in the northern Rockies and Montana and along the U.S.-Canadian border. But here in Alaska, pretty quiet conditions are anticipated now through early Friday morning. But a strong cold front is going to begin to impact areas of the eastern and central interior Friday afternoon and Friday night. That colder air is going to push toward the south and southwest as the result of a strong area of high pressure up in the Arctic Ocean, building a ridge southeastward there along the Alcan border as we go through the course of the weekend. That's going to create some gusty northeast winds, some areas of light snow and blowing snow, especially along some of the highway summits across the central and eastern interior. And overall, we anticipate below normal temperatures to continue across much of the mainland, especially centered over the southwestern quadrant of the mainland here as we go through the end of this month. Well, this Wednesday afternoon, mostly sunny skies up at Dead Horse, the temperature at 2 below zero. Further south, there in the southwest, Bethel, nice, clear, bright blue sky, 25 degrees, but these temperatures are below normal for this time of year. Further eastward, Sheep Mountain there, east of Palmer, along the Glen Highway, sunny, temperature just shy of 31, very pretty spot. And then Ketchikan has had a few isolated rain showers in the area, temperature at 52 degrees, and you can notice the more convective nature, the way those cumulus clouds have built up, creating those isolated showers, and some isolated showers will remain possible there in the southern panhandle. As we look at current advisories, watches, and warnings, none to speak of, but a special weather statement has been issued by the Fairbanks Forecast Office for that cold front that's going to impact the areas between the Alaska and Brooks Range as we go through Friday afternoon and night into this weekend. As I mentioned, some gusty northeast winds bringing in a shot of late season Arctic air, along with some areas of light snow and blowing snow, especially along some of the central and eastern interior highway summits. And one other little note, just as far as we're getting at the very end now of Alaska aurora viewing season, there's a possibility of a minor geomagnetic storm tonight or Thursday night. It's not a guarantee, but it could enhance any higher latitude Arctic auroras. The new moon, well, it occurs this Wednesday evening, April 19th. And a reminder, the aurora viewing season will be ending by late April, just simply due to the increasing daylight now here across the high sub and Arctic latitudes. So looking at the satellite imagery, we do have, as I mentioned earlier, we have some low pressure now down along the Gulf North Pacific interface, but much of the mainland is enjoying generally clear skies. There is an arc of clouds, ADAC, up there just northeast of Shemya. That's associated with a weakening occluded front, and really not much else there affecting the state. Area of high pressure over far eastern Russia and the Gulf of Anadyr. That high is going to kind of build back toward the north and northwest along the Russian Arctic coast as a stronger center of high pressure drops in from the Arctic Ocean and builds southeastward along the Alcan border here over the weekend. That's what's going to force that strong kind of backdoor-like cold front in through the especially eastern and central interior. So right now we have high pressure center just west of St. Lawrence Island with a ridge extending up just north there of the Alaskan and Canadian Arctic coast. Low pressure down there just south of the Gulf, and as we go into later tonight and early on Thursday morning, low pressure will be centered well south of Haida Gwaii with some rain wrapped around it, some scattered showers extending further north and west up into the lower Gulf, and a ridge of high pressure running across northern areas of the state, so much of the mainland will see skies that are clear to partly cloudy. Further west along the Aleutians, that front just weakens to a trough with some scattered rain or mixed rain and snow showers, and much of the interior will see generally clear skies. There could be a few light snow showers or flurries in areas of the north along portions of the Brooks Range, but it will not be that notable on Thursday. It's more as we get into Friday. Here comes that backdoor cold front advancing southward, and with it there will be some snow, light snow along it with gustier winds turning northeasterly and ushering a shot of late season Arctic air that will work its way southwestward down along the Yukon River Valley and getting all the way into the southwest by later Sunday, early next week. Will not be an especially strong push of cold air, but just not enough to really get us into some real springtime temperatures, though I think temperatures will moderate a bit here coming up. I'll show you in just a moment. Overall lows generally above freezing in the Panhandle, below freezing, western Kenai, Anchorage Bowl, northward. Temperatures, though, Thursday afternoon, not too bad. Many areas of the Panhandle, low and mid-50s. It'll get back up into the 40s to near 50 in a few spots across areas of south central, even up there around 50 at Talkeetna. Friday morning lows will generally be above freezing in the Panhandle, near freezing Anchorage Bowl, 20s Copper River Basin, and temperatures again Friday afternoon will be quite pleasant, 40s to near 50 degrees, even extending down along the Kenai Peninsula. For the far north, coldest temperatures Thursday morning will be along the central and north slope and eastern Arctic coast with some sub-zero readings. Afternoon highs will get back up around 40 around Fairbanks, Nenana, even along the northwestern coast, northern Seward Peninsula. We're looking for temperatures at least in the mid, perhaps upper 20s. Friday morning lows still could be near or a bit below zero. Prudhoe Bay, New Exit eastward through Kaktovik. Friday afternoon highs, though, maybe not quite as warm, but still in the 30s, well above freezing along the and south of the Yukon River. The colder air is going to begin to advance, though, southwestward there from along the Alcan border as we go into Friday night and Saturday. Across the southwest, teens some single digits for the interior tonight, and then temperatures along the western slope of the Alaska Range back up near 40, lower 40s there and through the eastern Aleutians. Friday morning lows, teens to lower 20s across the southwest interior, and again temperatures Friday afternoon can get back up above 40 Dillingham, King Salmon, and near 40 there McGrath, as well as down into the low mid 40s along the extent there of the Alaska Peninsula in through the eastern Aleutians. So here's the temperature outlook, 6 to 10 day April 29th or 25th through the 29th. Below normal temperatures are going to be centered over the western and southwest mainland. and areas of the Panhandle near normal temperatures are anticipated. As we go into the very end of April into early May, we'll see the extent of the cold relax a bit, but still centered over the southwestern third of the mainland, and areas of the Panhandle may start to finally see temperatures averaging above normal, so at least a trend toward a little milder early spring-like temperatures. Precipitation, though, will average above normal, especially there across the northeastern Gulf and Panhandle here as we head through the end of the month, and perhaps precipitation averaging a bit above normal over the mainland from areas around the Kenai Peninsula on up through the central Yukon River Valley.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's now time for your aviation weather. If you have a flight planned Thursday or on Friday, we're anticipating relatively quiet conditions across much of the state on Thursday, but that will change as a strong backdoor cold front pushes westward from up along the northeastern Arctic coast, the Alcan border there. That's going to be driving southwestward as we go through later Friday and especially over the weekend, Saturday into Sunday. Starting Thursday morning, though, generally VFR conditions across much of the mainland, a little area of MVFR possible there along the southeastern slopes there of the Brooks Range. Also a band of IFR conditions associated with a weak frontal system way out toward the western Aleutians early Thursday. And then as far as Thursday afternoon, generally VFR conditions across most of the mainland, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, across the Gulf, through the Panhandle. Friday morning, you're going to see hints of the MVFR associated with that front in the way north up along the Arctic coast. This front will be as the result of a strong area of high pressure over the Arctic Ocean building southeastward. It's going to push a late season Arctic air mass across the mainland here as we go through the course of the weekend, bringing some gustier winds, some scattered areas of snow showers or patchy light snow. And again, any gaps or ridges, we'll see some stronger winds here in areas of the central interior and around anywhere from, say, the Brooks Range down through the Alaska Range and in through areas of the upper Copper River Basin. So Friday afternoon, we'll start to see hints of MVFR conditions there along and behind that front as it begins to push westward across the areas from the northeast to southwest. And looking at Anatuvik Pass on Thursday, MVFR conditions, there could be a little bit there, especially along the east side of the Brooks Range with VFR conditions developing there later morning, afternoon. Same thing, Adigan Pass, a little bit of MVFR conditions early in the day, otherwise VFR will prevail. And across the entire Alaska Range, we expect VFR conditions, Lake Clark and Merrill, rounding up through Rainy, as well as Windy Pass, and then further east through Isabel and Mentasta Passes. VFR conditions and generally clear skies should prevail on Thursday. Tanita, dropping down through the Copper River Basin, VFR, as well as along the northern Gulf Coast, Portage Pass. We anticipate VFR conditions, and then across much of the Panhandle on Thursday, including the far north at Chilkoot and White. And looking at freezing levels aloft, the highest freezing levels are actually up across far eastern Russia and along the Russian Arctic coastline, associated with a dome of high pressure, bringing in relatively warmer temperatures, especially aloft there. Otherwise, freezing levels aloft are right around 2,000 to 3,000 feet along the Gulf Coast, Panhandle, and out over the Gulf. Surface freezing line early Thursday morning will run from along the far eastern Russian coastline to dipping just south of St. Paul and St. George, and then back up along areas of the Alaska Peninsula coastline up through Cook Inlet, and then along coastal areas of the northern Gulf and in through the inner channels and inner coastal mountains of the Panhandle. Icing, icing should not be an issue over the mainland. As I said, pretty quiet weather. Areas of the Canadian Rockies there, British Columbia, could be above 4,000 feet, associated with some scattered snow and mixed rain snow showers that pop up with the daytime heating Thursday afternoon and early evening. An area of low pressure south of Haida Gwaii could produce some moderate isolated icing there above 4,000 feet associated with the area of precipitation around that, and then an area above 3,000 feet way out toward the western Aleutians with that weak frontal system. Now looking at jet stream level, 30,000 feet, 300 millibars, we have a strong high circulation located over eastern Russia, a couple areas of low pressure, one north of the central Aleutians, another in the northern panhandle, with a jet core to 135 knots on the south end of Haida Gwaii. And at 700 millibars or 9,000 feet, we find that high pressure still anchored in the mid-levels of the atmosphere over eastern Russia. Low pressure there off the British Columbia coast southeast of Haida Gwaii, and generally a broad easterly flow from the Gulf up through much of the Bering Sea. And then at 3,000 feet, we find still that high circulation there, eastern Russia. Low pressure there off the British Columbia coast with a broad easterly flow from the Gulf, North Pacific up through the Bering Sea. And the greatest threat of turbulence on Thursday will be out across areas of the central and eastern Aleutians from the surface to 4,000 feet.
On March 11, 2011, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake off the Pacific coast of Japan generated a tsunami. This series of ocean waves sped towards the island nation, with waves reaching 24 feet high. The result was devastation and utter destruction. Towns were engulfed by water and swept away. Farmland was flooded. Tens of thousands of lives were lost. The National Police Agency reported damages to hundreds of roads, bridges, and more than 100,000 buildings. The surging water flooded rivers and destroyed harbors. In some areas along the coast, tsunami waves reached 6 miles inland. Tsunamis not only cause severe damage when they first strike land, but also as the water recedes back to sea. Tsunamis can inflict this type of damage because of some unique features. As tsunami waves travel across ocean basins, they may be as little as a few centimeters high, but they extend down to the ocean floor. This is different than traditional waves, which are only surface features. Tsunamis can also travel hundreds of miles per hour in the open ocean. As these waves approach a coast, the shallowing ocean floor slows the waves down and pushes the water mass upwards. The quicker the ocean floor transitions from deep to shallow, the greater potential for a higher wave height. So, tsunamis that experience this sudden shift into shallow water can have the height and momentum to pack a serious punch. Unfortunately, Japan found itself in this scenario. This image shows how abruptly the Japanese islands rise out of the ocean. Other coastal areas in the region have much more gradual slopes. The earthquake on March 11th was the most powerful known to hit Japan, and the tsunami it created had the necessary ingredients to make it such a deadly and destructive force. Miles east of Japan, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake rocks the ocean floor. This disturbance causes a transfer of energy from the seafloor to the ocean, generating a series of ocean waves known as a tsunami. In about 20 minutes, waves strike the Japanese coastline. Other nations go on high alert because the tsunami will propagate or spread throughout the Pacific Ocean. As the tsunami radiates outward from Japan, it encounters a variety of ocean features, such as ridges and underwater volcanoes, which guide the tsunami and create a complex pattern of scattering and reflective waves. In 8 hours, the waves reach the Hawaiian Islands, and in 9.5 hours, they hit the west coast of the United States. In 16 hours, the tsunami reaches the Indian Ocean and New Zealand. and by 22 hours, the entire Pacific Ocean had been affected. The impact of a tsunami can be highly variable because of the complicated interactions with ocean features and coastline elements. Wave height and speed will differ from place to place. Since tsunamis can be hundreds of miles long and travel thousands of miles away from where they originated, they are considered a worldwide threat when they form. These are the sounds of a tsunami warning. They alert residents that a killer wave is about to strike. These sirens, however, are just a small part of the sophisticated warning systems that played a role in Japan and in the U.S. during the Pacific Ocean tsunami in March 2011. Most tsunamis are generated by an undersea earthquake. Fortunately, Japan has one of the most advanced earthquake early warning systems in the world. It detects tremors, calculates the epicenter, and sends out warnings from over 1,000 seismographs scattered throughout the country. The Japan Meteorological Agency issues the warnings and sends alerts to television and radio channels, the internet, and mobile phone networks. When the earthquake struck 80 miles offshore, warnings were generated in about 3 seconds. The tsunami warnings came 3 minutes later. These take longer because more complex calculations are involved and must factor in ocean data. Since the first tsunami wave struck the coastline within 20 minutes, the advanced warning provided some residents with crucial minutes to reach a safe area. While the earthquake sent powerful tsunami waves westward toward Japan, the tsunami also propagated east into the Pacific Ocean. Here, warnings are issued by the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, operated by NOAA in Hawaii. NOAA maintains a large network of buoys with ocean floor sensors that are strategically positioned in the earthquake-prone zones of the Pacific. This system collects vital ocean data for tsunami forecasting. On March 11th, only 25 minutes after the earthquake struck, the first buoy station measured the tsunami and relayed information to Hawaii. Scientists use this data to run models and issue forecasts and warnings to nations throughout the Pacific. From there, local emergency managers decided what actions were appropriate to take for public safety. The earthquake and resulting tsunami devastated the Japanese coastline, causing damage that will take years to repair. While we can't prevent these forces of nature from happening, our early warning systems can help us prepare for the dangers headed our way.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and before we get into the marine weather, let's quick check the sea ice edge. Ice is still extensive across the Arctic coast down along the Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait and in through areas around Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island, though there are some plinias that have opened up, especially along the Russian coastline and in areas of northeastern Norton Sound. Further south and west, the ice edge now is around St. Matthew, southwest of Nunavik Island and Kuskokwim Bay. Still some ice within Bristol Bay and a little ice still remaining in areas of Turnagain Arm. But again, with the below normal temperatures, we don't expect to see this ice retreat much over the course of the weekend or early next week. If anything, it might advance a little bit southwestward there of Nunavik Island and Kuskokwim Bay as the result of strengthening northeast winds and a reinforcing shot of late season Arctic air. But for the inner panhandle on Thursday, winds will be northerly through Lynn Canal with waves of 3 feet. Southeast winds, though, Dixon entrance down toward Ketchikan and Metlakatla, and we expect waves there of 3 feet. Generally easterly winds along the outer Gulf Coast within the nearshore waters, 10 to as high as 20 knots there west of Craig with waves of 4 to 6 feet. On Friday, north winds continue there down along Lynn Canal, 20 knots with waves of 3 feet. feet. Northeasterly winds 15 knots, 3-foot waves there, Stevens Passage. And southeast winds continuing 15 knots with waves 4 to 5 feet there, Dixon Entrance. Generally 10 to 15 knot easterly winds along the outer Gulf Coast with waves running generally 5 to 7 feet. For the northwestern Gulf, winds will be out of the northeast. 10 knots Prince William Sound, Upper Cook Inlet with waves a couple of feet in those locations, but 20 knots out of Cook Inlet entrance there with waves right around 4 feet. On Friday, variable winds Prince William Sound and off the Kenai coast, 10 knots with waves running a couple of feet within Prince William Sound. Winds are northerly 15 knots through Middle Cook Inlet and northwesterly there at the entrance, 15 knots with waves of 4 feet. On Thursday, Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula will generally see northeasterly winds around 20 knots, waves 5 feet Shelikof Strait, 4 to 7 feet on the North Pacific side, and 2 to 4 feet on the Bering side. For Friday, northeasterly winds generally will continue right around 20 knots, waves 5 feet within Shelikof Strait, and 6 to as high as 10 feet there southeast of Sand Point, and generally 3 to 5 feet on the Bering side. Generally, easterly winds will prevail across the length of the Aleutian chain at 20 to 25 knots, waves 9 to 12 feet on the North Pacific side, and 5 to 7 feet eastern and central Aleutians, but as much as 10 feet there west of Adak. And then for Friday, winds turn northeasterly across the eastern Aleutians at 20 knots, but continue easterly and pick up to 30 knots there from Kiska up through Shimia. Waves will generally be running 9 to 12 feet on the North Pacific side and as much as 5 to 8 feet on the Bering side. Plenty of ice still along areas of the west and southwest coast. Winds will be northeasterly 10 knots out of Norton Sound to off of the lower Yukon Delta. Northeast winds 20 knots St. Matthew, 8-foot waves, and then on Friday winds turn more northerly, 10 knots there within Norton Sound and along areas of the lower Yukon Delta, as well as 20-knot winds there, north winds out of Kuskokwim Bay with ice in place. Along the Arctic coast, winds will be relatively light on Thursday, east-northeast around 5 knots east of Utqiagvik through Kaktovik. Generally south winds 5 to 10 knots through the lower Chukchi Sea, turning around back toward the north-northeast around 10 knots from the north side of St. Lawrence in through Norton Sound. And then on Friday, winds do pick up with that backdoor cold front beginning to push southeastward along the Alcan border and eastern Brooks Range. Winds 20 knots with ice in place there in the eastern Arctic coast. Winds turn more toward the north-northwest of 10 to 15 knots lower Chukchi Sea, and generally north to northwest winds 10 to 15 knots passing through the Bering Strait on the north side of St. Lawrence Island and into Norton Sound. So Thursday afternoon, relatively quiet weather still prevails across the mainland, but there comes that backdoor inside cold front along the Alcan border Friday afternoon and evening.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.